Hi everyone, welcome to yet another fun and interesting lesson. We are still in the business studies subject. We are going to be covering forms of ownership today. This is another personalized lesson, so if there's anything that you might come across that you don't understand, you are more than welcome to either consult further research or your teachers, or you are more than welcome to enhance your knowledge further, because this is based on my understanding and me trying to make it simpler for the learner to understand. So just a quick disclaimer, I'm not a professional teacher. I am not under any educational union. This is based on my personal experience, and like I said, you are more than welcome to consult further or seek further assistance rather in terms of whatever I'll be covering here. So if there's something you don't understand, you are more than welcome to consult or to conduct further research on it. So without wasting any more of your time, let us get straight into it. Like I said, we are covering forms of ownership. So in business ownership generally, there are different kinds of ownership or different forms of ownership. So we are going to be covering those in today's lesson. So today's lessons highlights and objectives. We'll start with the highlights to identify the types of ownerships we have in the business sector. There are disadvantages and the advantages of those types of ownerships, as well as the characteristics. So there are certain things that apply only to those types or forms of ownerships, and they don't apply to other forms of businesses as well. So we are going to be covering some of those as well. And then in the objectives, what I feel would be the objective of the lesson is to have a better understanding of the forms of ownerships and the kinds of ownerships or the kinds of businesses we have in the country, to be able to differentiate the differences between those forms of ownerships. So to know the difference rather between a form of ownership A and form of ownership B, and what applies only to form of ownership A and what does not apply to form of ownership B. And the last objective is to apply whatever knowledge gained in the lesson in real life situations, because that is the most important objective for me personally, because I want you to be able to apply whatever you are learning here in real life situations and be able to see what you have been taught in real life, because whatever we're talking about in this lesson are things that are there in real life. So let's get straight into it. So what are forms of ownership? Now, forms of ownership, or form of ownership rather, is the legal position of the business and the way it is owned. In some cases, continuity exists even if a change of ownership takes place. For example, a member or shareholder dies or retires. So form of ownership is generally the position of the business and the way it is owned. So what kind of a business is it? How is it owned? So in the event of someone dying in the business, can the business continue, or is there no continuity? So form of ownership is just the legal position of a business. It's in its natural state. So then it's just a business and how it is owned, or the way it is owned or operated. So it is important as well to know the characteristics, number one, advantages and disadvantages, number two, and the differences between the various forms of ownership, number three. Now, the forms of ownership discussed below include sole proprietor, partnership, close corporation or CC, non-profit company or non-profit organization, NPO, and then you have your profit company, your private company, personal liability company, or public company, or PTI, LTD for kinds of companies. So the information on all forms of ownership is summarized in the next slide so that the different forms of ownership can be compared with each other. On your side as a learner, it is also important that you study the characteristics very well, as this can help you think of advantages and disadvantages of the different forms of ownership. So for you to be able to understand what is the difference between a sole proprietor and a partnership, this is you saying you must literally have the time to read through or to study not only by reading what you see in the textbook, but to go out there, because all these forms of ownership are there in your surrounding, so they might not all be there at once, but there is a sole proprietor kind of ownership in each and every community. So this is just you applying the knowledge in real life situations, like I said. So it's easier for you to compare a sole proprietor to a close corporation or a NPO to a profit company. So the more you engage in these things, the more it is easier for you to understand. So we'll start with the first form of ownership, which is a sole proprietor. So an example of the form of ownership, or rather the definition, a sole trader or sole proprietor is a business that is owned and controlled by one person who takes all the decisions, the responsibilities, and profits from the business they run. Your simplest example is a local spaza shop. If you can look at it in that situation, someone who owns a spaza shop is responsible for each and everything in that shop, from the stock taking to things like finances, to things like electricity or rent or expenses. So everything lies on that owner of the business. So this is the first kind of ownership you might come across. Who owns or manages the business? It is obviously the owner of the business, in this case the sole trader. The number of owners is one, obviously, and who shares the profit? And the owner shares all the profits. This is the simplest form, for me personally, of ownership that you can start if you are into business and you want to start your own business, because the process of you starting this kind of a business is not really that complicated. There are not a lot, like, it does not require a lot of things on your side. Obviously there are disadvantages, and we'll discuss them later on in the lesson. Now the second form of ownership we have is what we call a partnership. So what is a partnership? It is a business or firm that is owned and run by two or more partners. So I use this example because I feel it might be applicable to you. Kanye West is best known for his Grammy-winning rap albums, partnered with Adidas to develop a high-end footwear line called Yeezy. I'm sure some of you guys or all of you guys know the Yeezy brand. So it is a partnership between Kanye West and Adidas. So this is one kind of a partnership. There are many other forms of partnerships. So the number of owners in this form of ownership range from 2 to 20 partners. So the owners partly are called partners as well. So who shares the profits? The partners share all, or they share in all profits and suffer all the losses. So it's a give and take. It's either you win or you lose. We'll discuss the disadvantages at a later stage in the lesson rather. So in terms of the POPI Act, I just wanted to let you know, guys, that I do not own any rights to the picture you can see. It is mainly used for educational purposes. So I understand I might get in trouble with the new POPI Act, but just to relieve myself from the unnecessary attention, I do not own any rights to the picture. I just used it for educational purposes. So the third form of ownership we'll be covering today is what we call a closed corporation. A closed corporation is a company whose shares are held by a select few individuals who are usually closely associated with the business. So at the end of the name, so if the name of your closed corporation is called ABC Enterprises, at the end of the business names there must be the letters CC. So that will indicate to you that this is a closed corporation, and all the documents that this business might have, then the letter CC must also appear on all the legal documents, whether it's your contracts or whether it's your lease agreements between the business and the owner of the place the business is renting its premises from. They must all end with CC. The number of owners in a closed corporation range from 1 to 10. So the owners are also called members. Who manages the business? Depending on the kind of business you have, in some cases you have all the members that manage the business. In some cases you have some of the members who manage the business. So in terms of what happens when the business generates profits, who shares the profits? The members shares in all profits and they suffer all losses. It's give and take as well in this scenario. The next form of ownership we are covering today is what we call a non-profit company. So according to Salomon 1999, non-profit organizations are organized for a public or mutual benefit other than generating profit for owners or investors. They can take a variety of forms, from informal neighborhood associations, soup kitchens, local churches rather, or traditional charities serving the poor, to labor unions, self-help groups, or museums, hospital, and large universities. They must end with the letters NPO, standing for non-profit organization. Okay, just to clarify or make it simpler, summarize it, because this was just a definition from a gentleman called Solomon. I forgot his name, so this is according to him. This is what defines a non-profit company. In simple forms, a non-profit company is a company that exists with no intentions of making money, but instead to help the community. So you find soup kitchens, maybe your local churches, self-help groups for people who are struggling with depression, charity organizations. Those are non-profit companies. They exist, but they don't have the intention to make any profit. So an example of form of ownership would be the Lucky Lekhwati Foundation. You see, some of these known people, some of these celebrities also have foundations. For example, Cristiano Ronaldo also has a foundation. I'm not sure if it's exactly named as it is, but this is just to give you an idea to say, if you can see, a lot of these companies have what we call NPOs or CSI. We covered that in the previous lesson, if I'm not mistaken. So corporate social responsibility. So these are those companies, people who want to help the community, or people who see a need in the community, but they don't want to make profit from that need or that problem in the community. They just want to address the problem, and then that is it. So a non-profit company, like I said, is just a company that operates without the intention of making money. So who owns or manages the business? The owners are called members or directors, or even both. Now, in the event that a non-profit company makes profit, it's possible for NPOs to make profit, because what happens is that you get sponsorships rather from different companies. So if I have a foundation and I am donating clothes each and every month, and I can see that I do not have enough money to buy those clothes to donate each and every month, what I do is I go and approach these big companies to say, okay, this is what I do for my community, would you guys help me donate in whatever way? So in that scenario, there is a bit of profit made from that. So who shares the profit in that scenario in such a business? Money or property may not be distributed to members or staff other than wages or salaries. So whatever profit that is made from this kind of a company may not be distributed rather to the members or staff, besides if the profit is directed towards paying those employers or paying those staff, then that is fine. But if a non-profit company makes money or profit from whatever venture they are doing, they cannot distribute that money amongst themselves. So because their main intention is not to make profit but to assist the community. So if in the event that there is money made from such a company, then if there are people that are employed to work in that company or organization, then a bit of that money can be used to do what? To pay off those people, to pay their salaries, and whatever money that remains then would be up to the directors or the members to say, do we then purchase other stuff to donate or what else? But they cannot share the money amongst themselves. I hope that makes sense. We also have what we call a profit or a private company. Now, a profit company is operated for the purpose of financial growth for the shareholder. Usually they end with what we call PTY Limited. LTD stands for limited. PTY Limited, PTY Ltd. So this is the opposite of the company we just highlighted previously, a non-profit company. So this one has the intention of making money. The previous company or the previous form of ownership does not really have the intention to make money, but to assist, lend a helping hand. So an example of this form of ownership would be Pick n Pay Group, PTY Ltd. I'm not sure exactly as to whether Pick n Pay is a profit or private company, but I just added the PTY Ltd at the end to give you an idea, to say, oh, when you see such a name, then you'll be able to identify, to say, okay, this is a profit company or a private company. We have Moroka Swallows PTY Ltd or Johnny's Fish and Chips PTY Ltd. They as long as you can see the names PTY Limited at the end, then you would be able to see that this is a profit company. Now, the number of owners in this kind of ownership rather depends on the number set by the business. So the owners are also called shareholders. So these are people that have a stake in the business. They don't really own the business literally, but they have a stake in the business. So whenever there are meetings, annual meetings, then your shareholders also have an opinion because they own part of the business. So that's why they are called shareholders. So in a company of this manner, when profit is made, who shares the profit? Shareholders get dividends. So it is another word for money. What we call dividends is similar to you saying money. So these people own shares in the business. Whenever the business makes money, they get paid dividends. Just another word for money or profit on those shares that were sold. So these are various kinds of ownerships you might find in the business world. We are going to tackle the advantages and disadvantages now. So we tackled the different kinds of ownership and their characteristics and the differences between each one. Now we are going to tackle the advantages and disadvantages. We'll review them in the next slide. We are going to start with the first form of ownership, which is a sole proprietor. We are going to move from left to right. So we'll start with the advantages. What are the advantages of owning a spaza shop and you are the main owner? You you are the owner of the spaza shop. What are the advantages of you owning such a business or form of ownership? Firstly, it is easy and it is cheap. It might not be true, but it is very easy to start your own business and your own spaza shop. I will use the spaza shop in this event or in this scenario because there is really not a lot of things you need to do. For example, if you can just get a bit of capital, you can even say 500 rand to buy those veggies, then you are good to go, so it is easy to start this kind of a business, and not always cheap, but it is relatively affordable, depending on the kind of business you are venturing into. So yeah. Secondly, the owner gets all the profits. So if I have my own business and I'm a sole proprietor, sole trader, whatever money I'm making goes to me, besides money to buy stock, or if maybe I'm renting to pay the landlord a bit of rent there and there. Whatever else I make after that goes directly to me. So this is another advantage of owning this kind of a business or form of ownership. Thirdly, the owner is eager to succeed. So when you start your own business as an individual and you tell yourself to say, I want to start a marketing company, or I want to start a accounting firm, or I want to open my own spaza shop next to where I stay, you have that eagerness to be successful in whatever you are venturing into. The fourth advantage, you gain all-round experience. So firstly, when you start your own business as a sole trader, you learn how to market your products or your services. You learn how to run the financial side of the business. You learn how to deal with customer service. So you gain experience in all these different departments as well. The last advantage is you have close contact with customers, your suppliers and employees, because you are the person that is dealing mainly with those people. So regularly you'd have contact with people who come to buy, people who come to complain, people who come to refer you to other people. So you are in contact with all of these people, rather, in most cases, because you are the sole trader, you are the owner. But it has disadvantages as well, because the first one, obviously, as the owner, you will focus on some areas and you will neglect other areas. So maybe you can see that your business is doing well in terms of marketing. Everyone knows that you have a spaza shop. Every school child knows that after school I'm going to go to who and whose spaza shop to go and buy a pair of sweets or a pair of chips, a packet of chips. But there are other areas as well of the business you are neglecting in the same process, so it's one of the disadvantages of owning a business and you are alone there. And the second one is you are overworked as the owner, because all the duties of running the business are based on or are on you entirely. So everything is looking at you to say you need to ensure that each and every month there is money made out of the business. Money must be distributed to either rent or expenses or stock, and you have suppliers that are calling you each and every day to say, we have the stock ready. You must make sure that you are interacting with those people. You have customers that walk in every day. If you have a bad day and you are stressed, it's a disadvantage, because no one wants to come and buy from someone that's not happy to serve them, So yeah, in the event of a closure of such a business, there is no continuity, because you are the owner at that time. So unless if you are lucky, it's more of a family business and you have been running the business, and maybe the business was passed on to you by your grandmother, your grandfather, your mother, your father, then yeah. But if you are the only person running the business and you have no intentions of passing it over to the next generation, then it's difficult to restart again. And sometimes it's difficult as the sole proprietor not to buy in bulk your stock or to negotiate discounts, because firstly there is not enough money, so to say, depending on the kind of business you have. So it's difficult. You are literally living from hand to mouth. We are going to discuss the second form of ownership, its advantages and disadvantages. This is a partnership. So what are the advantages of being in a partnership? There is more money or capital than a sole trader, because the size of the company is bigger than the sole trader or the sole proprietor in most cases. So there is more money to be made. The expenses, responsibilities, and tasks are shared equally amongst the members or the partners, depending on who does what, but not everything lies on one person. The third disadvantage is each person or each partner is motivated to make business a success. So if you have 4 partners in a business or members in a business and all of you guys are willing to make a business a success, it's much more easier to make it a success, because when one is down, someone else can be able to pick him or her up. The fourth advantage rather is that all the partners benefit from the profits made. So whatever money is made from there, all the partners benefit from the profits made. So obviously it would be wiser to share the profits amongst yourselves equally to avoid any clashes. The disadvantages of this form of ownership is that partners may disagree at times, because what makes sense to me might not make sense to you. So it's difficult to make decisions, or they may disagree at times. So yeah, it is difficult to always have a team that agrees all the time. So the second disadvantage is that decisions take time, as each one's opinion is taken into consideration. If you are a team of 8 members or partners in a business, and you want to start something inside the business, or you want to grow a business in a certain manner, then each one's opinion is valuable, because I cannot say my opinion is better than yours and therefore this is what goes. This is a decision we are taking, because each one of the members also has an opinion to make with regards to whatever the business decides to do. So it is frustrating at times, but if you guys have a common goal, then it's easier to achieve. And then the third disadvantage of a partnership, this is based on what I see or my understanding. What partners' dishonesty and deals affect the rest. So if you're a member of 8 people, if you're a team of 8 people and one of your members is not honest in the way they are trying to play their part as one of the team members, then it affects the whole team. It's similar to any kind of work environment where you work in teams. If one is pulling the other way and the majority is pulling the other way, it affects the overall performance of the team. So yeah, we are going to move on to the advantages and disadvantages of a close cooperation, CC. The letters must end with CC at the end, remember. The first advantage is that it is easy and it is cheap. What I mean by this is that there is no red tape. There are not a lot of documents that one must sign in order to have a legal company registered under a CC or as a CC, a close corporation. It is also easy to change the founding statement. So what I mean is that the founding statement is a statement in which the business drafts to ensure that each and every person in the team knows their roles and responsibilities. So this is the document that the business will draft, and it outlines what the business is really about. So it is easier to change such a document because you are working in a team of 1 to 10 members. So sometimes when there are alterations or changes in a business, it is easy to change that statement because majority of the people would have agreed to whatever change the business has at the time. The third advantage is that it has continuity even though a few members can leave the business. So even if 2 members can leave, the remaining 7 can still continue with the business and still have that very same founding statement leave its purpose even though 2 of the 10 have left. But it also has disadvantages, obviously. So the money or the capital is limited to only those 10 members. If a member acts without skill and care, the member is liable for losses. It's similar to a team environment. These things it's more or less repeating the same thing, because if you're a team of 10 people and one is pulling the other direction while the remaining 9 or 8 are pulling in the other direction, one potato spoils all the other potatoes. I forgot that straight statement, but one rotten potato obviously will lead to all the other potatoes being rotten. So it's the same thing. Decision making takes time as all members are involved, similar to a private company or a partnership where there is more than 3 people involved or more than 2 people involved. Then decision making is going to take time because each and everyone's opinion is valued. And the last disadvantage mainly of a CC is that it can lead to conflict amongst members, similar to what I just previously said, that if one member pulls the other way, the other members pull the other way. It's difficult. In most cases, people fight over that. So the last section we are covering is the disadvantages and advantages of a non-profit company, an NPO, your charity organizations, your soup kitchens, your local churches. What are the advantages of such an organization or such a company? Firstly, it is publicly responsible, which creates trust. I mean, if you are a company and you are well known for giving out things like food items, it creates that trustworthiness from you guys to say these people are to be trusted in whatever they are doing. So you gain that trust from the people you are working with. You gain trust from the local community as well. Another advantage which I like for such a company is that you are exempt from tax from SARS. So you get certain deductions or certain percentages are not charged because you are giving back. That is why you have most of these celebrities, 95 or 97% of these celebrities, whether you are in business, whether you are in sports, whether you are in entertainment, whether you are in arts, there is a way in which they avoid the taxman, and that is by giving back. That is why you see most of these people, you hear that someone like Akon has donated 50 billion rands to a school in his country, or he has built a hospital that costs 50 billion or 10 billion rand. That is because they want to show the taxman to say we are doing what we can to help the community, so you cannot charge us that tax, So this is another good advantage, and I personally vouch for such a company. But yeah, for personal reasons, of course. And the third advantage is that it is easier to get funding from the National Lotteries Trust and other agencies. So if you are a person that feels like you want to give back to your community in any way, and it is easier for these big companies to support you because they can see that you are doing good in the community. No one wants to support someone that has bad intentions, so it's easier for you to have a company that is trustworthy and is approachable, and than to have a company that is not trustworthy. Yeah, so the disadvantages of having such a company is that you must keep each and every financial document, financial record. Each and every transaction that you make must be kept. There must be proof, because if you used 10,000 rand to buy a pair of boots or pair of shoes, but you do not have that proof, then it brings the idea that you are being, you are misusing the finances. So for you to get sponsorship from these big companies, they want to see each and every record you are keeping. So that is why it is almost important. It is very important that if you are running such a business, you are really trustworthy and you really have the intentions to help. Not to say you want to get a bit of leeway from SARS. That is why you open that company and then you misuse the funds. It creates a bad name for you. The second disadvantage of having a non-profit company, NPO, is that you may make some of the profit, but you may not distribute property or profit to the members. So whatever money you make from that event, maybe you may not distribute it amongst yourselves. It must go back into the business, because the main intention of having such a company is not to make money, but to help in wherever you're operating. And ladies and gents, that brings us to the end of this lesson. Thank you very much for listening, taking the time out to hear what I had to say, or to taking the time out to listen to or watch this lesson. Before we go, we are going to cover the last advantage and disadvantage of one of the forms of ownership, which is a profit or private company, opposite of a non-profit company. The first advantage, obviously, is that the number of shareholders allow more capital. So the more you have the shareholders in the company or in the organization, it is the more profit the company is going to make, because a lot of people buy these shares. So the more you have people buy shares, the more profit you will make. The second advantage is that you don't really have to meet each and every month or each and every year to have these meetings. So they do have some of these companies, but sometimes they are not really necessary. So it's not compulsory for each and every member or shareholder to come to each and every meeting. So yeah, this is another advantage of having such a company. Now, the disadvantages of having such a profit or private company is that for you to form that company, it's complicated. There are a whole lot of documents that you must sign to ensure that you are legally registered, and there is a whole lot of things that must go into before you can actually say this is a company that's operating. So that is why most people would advise you, most business people advise people who want to venture into such companies to say, start running the business before you can go the legal way or trying to register it and all of those things. Have that actual business run first, because it becomes complicated, and you might even give up before you even have the actual business. You might have the documents, but for you to get those documents might have been difficult in such a way that you don't want to continue with the business. So the second disadvantage is that you cannot get money from the general public for capital. So what this simply means is that since you are running a private or profit company, yes, your intentions is to make money, but in some cases such companies cannot receive money from the general public for capital. So you might have a shop or business that is making money, but sometimes you cannot get money from stakeholders, donations into the business, because it depends on the kind of business you have. So what the statement generally means is that sometimes it is difficult to not get funding. It's difficult to get funding from the public. So yeah, I would not personally vouch for this kind of a business, but we are different people and we have different opinions, different aspects. Yeah, so that is all for today, guys. Thank you again for taking your time. I know it's quite a long lesson, but the more you teach yourself to apply whatever you've learned in real life, the better it is for you. So thank you very much for taking the time out to watch this lesson. And like I said, this is based on my understanding of whatever topic I'm covering. So if there's something you do not understand, you are more than welcome to consult or conduct further research. That is all for today. Thank you very much, and yeah, have yourselves a blessed day and week.